Your mind is either your most powerful ally or your worst enemy. The choice is yours. That is a quote from author Barbara Corrales. I apologize if I said your name wrong. And today we're going to be talking about how your mind might be holding you back when it comes to getting to financial freedom and financial success. It's amazing how powerful our thoughts are and how powerful those thoughts can hold us back. And today we're going to go through some of the reasons that you might be holding yourself back when it comes to financial success. I will share my personal story, which is a lot more relatable to many of you than I think you probably assume, being that I'm in the financial planning industry or financial advising industry, and have been doing this for 13 plus years, almost 14 years, my goodness. Anyhow, so let's get started, shall we? All right. So we need to understand money blocks. There are a lot of people who have pent up anxiety when it comes to their feeling about money. Often I will start to ask people if I feel like they're open, some money memories that they have, maybe the best thing that they ever did with their money, maybe the biggest regret that they have, that kind of thing. And the reason I do that when I'm doing my fact finding or my, basically getting to know you call with clients is that I want to know where they're coming from. I want to know what kind of hangups we might be hitting on when it comes to putting certain things in place to get them to their goals, their financial goals. And so I often go through this exercise with people, and it's very uncomfortable for them. But I think it's worth it because in the end, I have an understanding of where they're coming from, and I know where to push and where to maybe hold back for a little bit, and we work on together to try to push through some blockades. Now, obviously, I am not a therapist, but I feel like I play one sometimes on television. And honestly, this is a very important conversation to have about money and trying to uncover some money blocks that might be in there. And everybody has them. We all have these money blocks, whether it comes from childhood, whether it comes from a mistake we've made, whether it's watching our family and what they've done wrong. There is a lot that is psychologically stopping us from being successful. And you can see it in patterns. I've had people who I can see them self-sabotaging. They get to a certain point and then they self-sabotage. They listen to some advice, but they don't listen to other advice. That they don't listen to the protective advice that might help them in a bad time, things like that. And so we really have these blocks that keep us hitting our money goals. So let's go through a couple of them. Obviously, this is not everything, but let's go through a couple of them and see if maybe one of these resonate with you. And I'm going to share some personal anecdotes that I've gone through, because I wasn't always in the financial industry. I was in Hollywood. I worked for talent agencies and production companies, and then I moved into teaching for a bit. I taught young elementary school kids, and then I moved into finance, really insurance, and then into finance. And so I did not have a financial degree. I had an English Lit major, which I love my English Lit major, but it did not prepare me for anything. I'm sure many of you understand that comment. Anyhow, I'd much rather have been an econ major with what I do now, but I wasn't. And I think the fact that I was not a finance person walking into it, I had very little understanding of how finance worked, and I will explain that to you, through this video. And I kind of wanted to talk about this so that you understood that there are people out there that feel the way that you do. A lot of times as women, I know that we tend to feel like we're alone, that everybody is smarter than us when it comes to certain subjects. And the biggest thing I hear all the time from women is, I'm just not smart when it comes to money, or I'm not good when it comes to math. That's why I'm not good with money. And it has very little to do with math. It really has to do with knowing where you want to go and pushing yourself forward and aligning yourself with trusted resources and educating yourself. And so I was thinking about this weekend, and I just thought this video was really important because I think we put so much emphasis on, I'm not smart enough, I didn't get that education. And I'm going to show to you how if you just put in a little work, it actually pays off in the long run and builds that self-confidence. So let's go through some of the blockades that we have. One is fear of failure, right? And we have this with everything. This is the biggest discussion when it comes to talking about success, is fear of failure, fear of not accomplishing that goal, fear of not being able to take that trip to Europe that you've always wanted to, fear of not being able to retire. That is a big one. Fear of not being able to pay off your house or buy a house right now, especially for that younger generation. They are having a difficult time purchasing a house because of everything in the economic condition. And really, I hate to say it, but the pricing of homes too. We love it when we're a homeowner that the price of our home just keeps going up, but that is not a good way to make sure that young people can get into the housing market. So we've got to figure out a solution for that. And so, the biggest question I ask clients is, what would you try if there was no way you could fail? That gets people really thinking. And so it unleashes some side of us that we didn't even know existed. I have clients who have brought up trips, have brought up experiences that they did not even know that they wanted because I took failure out of it. And we should be going after what's truly motivating us, because part of the reason that we fail a lot of times when it comes to our money management is there's not enough motivation to actually succeed in the goal that we've put for ourselves. Maybe that's retiring, maybe that's whatever that I always call them the very, blanket answers that people give me. I want to travel, I want to retire, I want to, spend time with family. And these are not bad answers, but there's just no meat around them. They're not very motivating, because what does that look like? What are we doing with our family? Are we going fly fishing? Are we doing crafts at home? Are we traveling the world with them? These are very different conversations and very different money points, right? If you're traveling the world with your family, that's going to cost a lot more than if you're sitting at home crafting. So we need to have those conversations. And people will not let themselves get to that point of detail, because the more detail you put around something, the more you envision it, you want it to be true, and if you fail, then it hurts that much more, right? And so essentially, we don't put enough detail around things. We don't think outside the box of what traditional society has told us we should want for retirement or not retirement, right? A lot of people don't necessarily want to retire, but they want financial freedom. And financial freedom looks different. Timeline's different. Things are different. Is it a form of retirement? It could be, but we don't know, because we're not putting any details around it, because the more details we put around something, the more real it is, and the more it hurts us when we fail. And so we need to get out of our own way when it comes to failure. So a good exercise you could be doing is ask yourself, what would I want? What are 3 things I would want if failure was not on the table, if that could not happen at all? And list those out and put a lot of detail around them and start working on one of them. And once you start working on it, the motivation around that is going to be so much better than I want to retire someday. That's not very motivating, because there's no meat behind it. All right, number 2 is lack of self-worth. Now, I'm going to come from a female perspective, because that's all I know, where I'm female. But a lot of women I talk to, and I work with a lot of women out there, are very insecure when it comes to their knowledge of finance. You can have powerhouse women in real estate, powerhouse attorneys, they're just killing it when it comes to their career, and yet they shrivel when it comes to talking about money. And I was listening to a podcast with Cody Sanchez, who's a female who does investing and owns businesses and things like that. And she said she was in I might be getting this story a little wrong, but she this is what I took from it at least. She was in a women empowerment kind of camp, for a weekend or something. Lots of very high-powered women in there, executives at huge corporations, things like that. And the question was something like, who loves money? And Cody Sanchez raised her hand high, and everybody else in the room was kind of like, I guess, or I don't know. Like, we have this weird thing where as women, we don't feel like we can embrace that side of us, whether we feel like we're materialistic by doing that we are unaware of how money works, and so therefore we can't embrace that. I'm not quite sure what that is. And I had that too. I tell this story a lot. I've told it on podcasts, I've told it in other areas, and it's 100% true. It doesn't sound like it is, but it is. It's 100% true. I grew up not knowing very much about money. I didn't really get the education in school like everybody else. I didn't really have that education. Growing up, I remember kind of asking about how stocks works and stuff, and people wouldn't give me an answer. It just kind of was seen as like I wasn't really supposed to be involved with money that much. And essentially I got married, and my husband is very, 50-50. He wants me to be involved in decisions. And we got married and we bought our house all because of him and his efforts. More than anything, because I didn't want to be involved with the mortgage process and all that because I didn't know what we were doing. So just let him do it. I kind of did that, which unfortunately a lot of women do. And a lot of women don't do that too, but a lot of women do that. And we were sitting on the couch for about 3 months into our marriage, maybe. And he said, we have some money left over and we have quite a bit of money sitting in the bank. Should we do something with it? Maybe we should get some more interest on it, invest it someplace, put it someplace else. And I started to panic because I thought, and this was before I was in the industry, I was teaching at this point. And I thought, what is he talking about interest? That's for loans. What is he talking about? I don't know what he's talking about. And I don't want to look dumb. And so I panicked. And instead of just asking my husband to say, can you explain that? I'm not really sure what you mean by interest. Like, what are some other options? I don't really know what else we could do with it. I panicked and I said, just leave it in the bank. It's fine. And he said, okay. And he just kind of went on with doing bills or whatever else he was doing. That had triggered this thought in his mind. And, hindsight, was that a huge decision that I made out of fear? No. But it could have been. It could have been a huge decision that I reacted that way, thought, I don't want to look stupid. And so therefore, I'm just going to rush a decision. And unfortunately, because of my lack of self-confidence when it came to this area, this was the area, it's ironic, I know, because this is what I do all day, and I feel very comfortable in talking about money and personal finance now. But this was the thing that I felt like a dodo. I felt like a dummy when it came to money because I didn't learn anything. I was very lucky. I didn't have to take loans out for college. I didn't have to, my credit card, I knew how to pay it off, like that. I mean, that was kind of my thing. I knew enough to keep myself out of getting into a lot of trouble and debt, but that was it. And so I always had guilt when it came to money. I'm not quite sure why. I always felt guilty when it came to money at all. And so that was the way I reacted. And that's not a healthy reaction. And it was due to my lack of self-confidence. Now, I will tell you, people will say, well, you're in the industry, so of course, but I learned how to do and talk about money and understand what works for certain people and what doesn't, and the different avenues and the different resources that are out there, and investing and all that stuff through conversation. And I really urge women out there to start having more conversations about money. It gets less icky. It gets less daunting, overwhelming, and it will build your self-confidence. Because I don't know how many trainings I would sit through when I first started in the insurance industry, and they would just talk and talk and talk. It went right over my head. I had no idea what they were talking about. No clue what they were talking about. I was taking notes like crazy. I'm like, I don't know what that means, but we'll do. And I'd Google it, and I still don't understand it. And I'd sit in another training, and I'd hear about that, and I'd start talking to people, I'd start talking to my husband about what that meant, and he didn't know always because these were concepts that he wasn't aware of either. So it's I started just kind of leaning into my not understanding and started having more conversations. And in the end, I was able to guide, people like my parents and my brother and my family and people that I cared about into making better financial decisions because I was willing to have those conversations and I was willing to learn slowly but surely and realize that it was helping over time. And so, we get stuck in this comfort zone and we don't feel like we can get out of it. And so one thing that you can do to really build your lack of confidence when it comes to money is to start reading maybe an article a week. You can go to Yahoo Finance, just choose something that sounds kind of interesting and read it. Whether or not you understand it or not, you might not at the beginning. I know I didn't understand a lot of stuff at the beginning either, but you start to build and having conversations. So I was lucky because obviously I was having conversations all the time because I was starting a career in this. But just starting to have conversations, I really encourage, I think women, like girlfriends, don't sit around and talk about money. We want to talk about our health and how we're eating, and we'll talk about our family, and we'll talk about all this other stuff, but we won't talk about money issues. And I know it feels scary to talk about that, and it doesn't mean money issues like you've got all this debt and stuff. It might just be, I was talking to my advisor the other day, and he wants to make this change in stocks, and have you guys ever gone through that? And do you know anything about these stocks, or where would you go to? It's amazing how, they might be on the same page that you are on. And it makes you feel better that you're not a dummy when it comes to this. You just like every average person. Or they might have some really good advice for you. Or they might say, hey, here's a second opinion person. Why don't you ask their opinion on that? Or my cousin's really into that. Why don't I connect you to her and she can help you with that? It's amazing what resources you can get if you just start having that conversation and stop being so shy when it comes to talking about that in the long run. So, and then, the biggest one, I think the biggest blockade we really have is procrastination. And I won't go too far into that because I've talked about this before. Everybody knows what that means. I don't really need to go into what that means, which is we know what we should be doing, but we just don't do it because we picture it being harder than it is. And, procrastination sometimes is okay. I will procrastinate on some bigger projects or bigger marketing things or stuff because, people say, well, you just need to take action and stuff. Yeah, but I also want to feel prepared for some stuff, not for everything. I usually will take a step forward, but, taking some time to think through how you're going to write an email back to somebody or how you're going to come at a conversation is not necessarily procrastination. It's being an adult and taking some time to figure out how you want to handle this, the different scenarios, how you're going to handle those, that kind of thing. But that's not what people do. I would say procrastination is really, people just don't want to think about it. So I don't know how many times I've talked to prospects and people who say that they haven't looked at their 401k in years. They don't even know how to log in. That's a problem. That's a big problem. So do not let procrastination get in your way. And a really good way to handle some of these procrastination things is set yourself a schedule. So if one of your things that you're procrastinating on is looking at your 401k, set it up so that every quarter you look at your 401k. Put it on the calendar for 15 minutes that you're going to look at your 401k. You might not understand anything that's on there, but it's better to look than to not look. Same thing with your credit cards. You guys have heard me say this. Look at your credit cards once a week, once a month, more than once a quarter. I think it's more than once a quarter, but once a month, okay. Once a week is better. It helps you figure out what you're spending your money on. So to me, those are three of the major things that are blocking you from being successful in your money journey. And I feel like I've given you three really good ways to get out of those. One, asking that question of what would you do if you couldn't fail? Another is start having some education, educating yourself, reading articles, having conversations with friends about money and money topics and maybe the economy. I know that's spicy right now with the election, but that kind of stuff. And 3, put yourself on a schedule so that you're actively involved with your finances. Once you start to realize that it's not so scary, the momentum will build, I promise you. So I hope this helped you figure out how to get around these money blocks that you might be having. And I work with clients on this all day long. So feel free to reach out to me and let's have a conversation if you need some help getting through your money blocks. And with that, thank you so much for waiting and for getting to the end of the video. I know it was a little bit of a long one, but I think it's really important that you understand that I've been where you are and that you're not alone when it comes to some of these money blocks. And there's many more out there, but I just wanted to focus on those top 3. So with that, take care. We will see you here at the next video. And until then, keep on carrying on. Bye-bye.